MAGA is super betrayed right now because the person that they thought was their last honest source turned out to be a Fed. Everyone trusted her in the MAGA world, and turns out the Pentagon was the one signing her checks. So it turns out that MAGA's most trusted voice was a Fed this entire time. And Turning Point USA is very likely to be taking orders from and working with the Feds and the Pentagon, because the Fed who just led the charge against Candace and that whole Candace slander takedown just got exposed. And we're now learning that the Feds are more or less running Turning Point USA. And what? Nobody noticed? This is crazy. This is huge news. Candace Owens has spent months getting hammered by Turning Point USA and also the MAGA establishment for two things. One, refusing to accept the official story around Charlie Kirk's, and also two, suggesting that maybe Israel, maybe Bibi Netanyahu had something to do with it. Candace and Charlie were best friends. And we remember, what was it, like 5 months ago, that there was a very obviously coordinated attack on Candace. I'm going to pop up a graphic. Conservative accounts were all using the same language to talk about her, calling her a demon, saying that she's going to hell, all of this stuff. But demon was like part of the coordinated messaging, clearly. And this all came out right around the time that Candace was dropping that mini docuseries, The Bride of Charlie. So we've seen this coordinated messaging. We can have a feeling that this is part of a larger campaign to destroy her, one that involved Ben Shapiro calling her a grifter and Turning Point USA's Andrew Kolvet, the guy who just authored the breeding criteria for women. He was pumping an NCRI report that painted Candace as somebody who was inciting violence against Erika Kirk. And then we also had DataRepublican. DataRepublican was dropping thread after thread saying Candace Owens is a digital assassin. And she did all of this timed to Tyler Robinson's preliminary hearing. And everyone treated DataRepublican like this neutral data person, just somebody who was just analyzing the data, finding the patterns, delivering them back, just following the evidence. But turns out she was working for the Pentagon this whole time and never said a fucking peep. So the woman asking who killed her friend got smeared, got painted as a menace to this grieving widow by a federal employee, amplified by an organization that had already announced a partnership with the State Department. So Owens said the machine was against her, and it turns out the machine ended up being the government payroll. And listen, Candace is not somebody I fundamentally agree with, but this is crazy, and I certainly don't want my hard-earned tax dollars going to Turning Point USA and a smear campaign in support of Erika Kirk. Give me a fucking break. What is this? Because listen, hours after this story broke this week, a man named Brian Skellinger posted a long complaint to an audience of about 29 people maybe at the time. He wrote that DataRepublican, the account that the Patriot crowd trusted more than any other, had turned out to be a Fed working for Pete Hegseth's Department of War. And he claimed she'd been running a psyop around the Charlie Kirk assassination the entire time. This is big news, guys. This is major news. And MAGA people are furious because they thought she was the one honest source they had left. And boy, were they wrong. Is there anyone really honest in that space? So to understand why this hit so hard and what this means for this whole investigation and what they were really doing, you got to stick around. I'm going to show you what the Feds are doing with Turning Point USA right now and who this Fed psyop really is.
So I think we now fully understand why it seems like Candace Owens and her cult following have been melting down for the last 24 hours all over social media after the revelation that Jenica Pounds, aka DataRepublican, has been working on behalf of the Department of War as a special government employee since July. So just a couple hours ago, we wrapped our 100th episode of the Patriot Source podcast. And because DataRepublican is a friend of the show and a personal friend of SK, we invited her on and gave her an opportunity to talk about whatever she wanted to talk about. And I think now we know exactly why the fake-ass Black Pill wannabe America First crowd have lost their minds. And before I show this to you, I want you to ask yourself a question. For people who call themselves America First and they pretend that the only thing they care about is the future of this country, ask yourself this question. Why are they attempting to destroy the one person who has the machine and the knowledge to understand the movement and the networks of the people who are trying to destroy the country. So as you watch this clip, it's important to know that DataRepublican is deaf and she did not have data interpreter with her. So you're going to hear the voice of SK and Nom de Plume reading what DataRepublican is saying or typing so that she can communicate through the show.
She said that she's going to walk everyone through one of her projects and show everyone how she does what she does.
She's actually a researcher, and this is what she does. Guys, she doesn't sit around and come up with narratives all on her own. She's got a massive one, and I'll say it again, one of one. No similar AI system is doing and is trained to do the things that this one is doing.
She said this is for everyone to be able to get an idea of how she does research right now. She said, so this is one of her heavier research projects. This is national security action. She published an article on it this morning, and it's a great article, by the way. These names on the screen are recognizable from other things like Crossfire Hurricane and Russian collusion and all of those types of things, which isn't that weird, right? She said, so all of these people are people involved with national security action. So what I did was scrape their biographies, then scrape everything about them. And you see where they were during Trump 1.0, where they were during Obama administration, where they were during the Biden administration, where they are now.
She showed us and the entire audience what her machine does. So you heard Nom de Plume say that what she has built is a one of one, a unique AI model that has the potential to see everything that these people are doing. And really the only thing slowing her machine down is time and resources. So if you're one of these people who are maybe engaging in a foreign influence operation.
That leaves us here. I'm going to read a tweet. Why is the Department of War being used against American citizens? Why is the Department of War involved in pushing Erika Kirk as an emotional asset? Why is Turning Point USA, a conservative nonprofit operation, voting operation, so involved with the military? Why was the military mission involved in the of the CEO of Turning Point USA? Why isn't anyone doing anything about it? And real quick, if you're new here, I'm Lauren Paritra. Willa Paritra and I, we do this every single day out of pure principle and an absolute refusal to let you guys ever fall victim to Stephen Miller or to any of these grifters. We call it out. We've been here since this all went down almost a year ago now. And we do this because Stephen Miller is hungry. He is feral. The deflecting pool is empty. That was his natural habitat. He has no place to go. And he could be showing up at your door through a small, tiny hole in the crawl space. If your sink isn't properly secured, he could be coming up there at night. He comes up through drains. He comes up through toilets occasionally. So be safe, subscribe, leave us a comment, 6 words or more, hype this video if you're watching on YouTube, follow us wherever you get your podcasts. We are independent, bootstrapped, people powered, and we have to watch our mouth because we're constantly losing monetization and discovery for controversial topics. So bear with us as I South Park certain words as a measure to keep my videos reaching you lovely people. So let's start here. This account called DataRepublican, big account on X. The full name also carries a parenthetical small r. And I was like, what is this small r? The small r is a deliberate choice. I didn't know what it meant, so I looked it up. Capital R Republican means kind of establishment Republican. Small r Republican is supposed to mean you care about the Republican government in the older sense, the rule of law and institutions, and that answers to the public no matter who's running them. But that sounds pretty pro-democracy to me. But anywho, she's sending a message with that small r, and she wants you to read her as unbiased. And well, turns out she's working for Pete Hegseth. And for a while, this worked as part of her branding and her true kind of ethos. She built a database that traced federal money as it moved through nonprofits and NGOs. So you could see who funded what and where the grants landed. Getting a fraction of that information used to take a newsroom and a year of FOIA requests. Elon Musk boosted her, and that was a big part of growing her account historically. I didn't know much about her, so I had to get on the phone with my pal Sam Parker, who was generous enough to explain all this history to me, and then I could also verify it with the materials available online. So she was getting boosted by Elon Musk, The online right really embraced her. They treated her as kind of like a folk hero, and her research fed straight into Doge. Then somehow somebody doxed her, and the name behind her account turned out to be owned by a woman named Jenica Pounds, which is going to, by the way, make for some great drag names, I'd imagine, Jenica Pounds. And up to this point, people thought she was just a citizen holding the government accountable, really just a woman of the people.
So when they came to me, I built DataRepublican. And the key difference was that you can search for text within award descriptions. I know that sounds crazy, but there was no way to do that before. And all of a sudden, people were finding those LGBTQ, climate change, crazy awards, transgender frogs, and whatever you want to call it.
And by awards, what you mean is a grant, right? Money that's coming from the government that's been awarded to an organization or, to a group, to an entity, to an agency, to whatever it is.
Correct. Yes. Coming straight from the government.
Okay. So, we can find lists of grants, lists of awards, but it's hard to follow that money. So you had the ability to follow that money. Is that the right way to describe it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Also, it's very technical, but back then you couldn't actually search for text inside an award. Like, you couldn't actually look up specific keywords. You could search for a year, you could search for who wrote it or who accepted it, but you couldn't exactly search for a description in the actual award itself. So I built the DataRepublican website, DataRepublican.com, and Doge was able to use it to search. And now the public can use it.
He, ha, ha, ha. How nice is that? Turns out you are the government. So she got a badge. So she picked up press credentials at the Pentagon and joined the press corps. She went from criticizing the federal government and then suddenly attending briefings. She had a badge around her neck, which is allowed. You can be an independent journalist and get credentialed. People do it all the time, and they're still very critical of the government. It's a big part of their research. It's worth noticing, though, that the person auditing the government now had a desk in the government's press room. So that was kind of the press release. Then this happened.
Sarah Rogers, the Undersecretary of State, who is involved in this public spat with Jenica Pounds, otherwise known as DataRepublican, got her job at the State Department on a reference from Blake Neff of TPUSA.
And I'm really excited about this next guest because her name is Sarah Rogers. She's the Undersecretary of State, so the State Department, for Public Diplomacy. And I don't want to say too much. I'm going to kind of throw this over to Blake, but she is Charlie helped when was very involved with the transition and helping with certain appointees. And man, Charlie just completely was just really impressed by Sarah, and now she has been confirmed, and it's just a continuation of Charlie's legacy. But Sarah is somebody that we got to know via you, Blake. So the floor is yours. Let's welcome Sarah in, but I'm excited to listen to you guys.
Of course. Yeah. Well, welcome, Sarah. We've been looking forward to this for a long time. This is someone Charlie was asking for people who should pitch to the administration. He asked me, he asked a lot of people. And I remember Sarah was one of the first two people that I sent a resume for. I said,
I think she was the first.
Get her in something. She's extremely smart, extremely effective, extremely based, as we say. And, very sad. We were so looking forward to having her on the show. Mm-hmm. And, unfortunately, she couldn't come on while she was just a nominee. The Senate was taking a very, very long time on these nominees, and we finally got her confirmed only after the tragedy. But Sarah, we're very, very glad to have you on the show right now.
Blake, Andrew, thank you so much for the warm welcome. It is a thrill and a privilege to be here. And I will try to live up to that glowing intro. I can't promise that I'll be smart, but I can promise that I'll be based.
First of all, Marco Rubio, why are you taking recommendations from Blake Neff for hires? We are so cooked as a government. My God, more cooked by the day, fried beyond. So listen, in August, Pounds went public with something alarming. She said Sarah Rogers had sent documents to her about Cuba and framed it as a scoop. And Pounds, who is Jenica Pounds, the DataRepublican, decided the whole thing was bait. So she would publish these, get charged as a leaker, and she told her followers the deep state had come for her. Rogers responded by posting the documents herself in public, noting that the markings pounds took for classification stamps were ordinary FOIA redactions. So there's a little bit of a sinister entrapment operation going on. And there was a press release that she received and potentially misread, which is a little bit like, Bush League, but it's also what pulled actual reporters into the story. So it served its purpose. And once they started asking, who is Jenica Pounds? And what's she up to these days? The Pentagon gave an answer. The answer was the department confirmed in writing that Pounds serves as a Department of War special government employee. Her press credentials had expired in June. She never renewed them, and she started the job in July. She hadn't told anyone. She hadn't disclosed anything. So for 6 weeks, one of the most influential independent researchers on the right was drawing a federal paycheck while her audience thought she was freelancing from her kitchen table. The Pentagon won't say what she does there, and neither will she. So she also kept posting during those 6 weeks. The timing is where this gets less debatable here. It's not an ethics quibble anymore. So on July 10th, and then again on July 12th, she published long threads pulling apart Candace Owens. She was also, I believe, really heavily tweeting her little heart out around the pretrial. But she was saying Candace and her claims about Charlie Kirk were horrible. She was really kind of sending her army after Candace, maybe even literally. And real quick, today's episode is brought to you by Laundry Sauce. As y'all know, Willa has been sick all summer long. And what that's meant for me is so much laundry. So I needed to make it a little bit more fun. So I started using Laundry Sauce. And honestly, I'm obsessed. The scent is incredible. Italian bergamot is my favorite, naturally. It's so fresh and so clean. I actually look forward to doing all the laundry now. And I've even got my neighbors asking, what is that? Here's the thing. Laundry Sauce is not your basic drugstore detergent. These are premium scented pods made by actual perfumers. The pods are super concentrated with enzymes that actually tackle everything. Mud, stains, coffee spills, all of it. And get this, Target just started carrying them. And for a limited time, you get 20% off your entire order when you use code Lauren at laundrysauce.com. That's 20% off your order at laundrysauce.com with promo code Lauren, Loren. And they've got a full money back guarantee. So if you don't get better smelling, cleaner laundry, you get a full refund. No questions asked. So head over to laundrysauce.com and use code Lauren, that's Loren, for 20% off. After your purchase, they'll ask about where you heard about Laundry Sauce too. Please support our show and tell them we sent you here. It's time to make Laundry Day the best day of the week. Tyler Robinson's preliminary hearing was underway in Provo at the time, or had just wrapped, and she walked through the confession note, the search warrant records, and the DNA, and she wrote that she was defending Charlie's legacy and his organization from people she considered evil. Candace, again, somebody I fundamentally disagree with, but what I do appreciate about her, dare I say, don't come for my throat on this one, is her commitment to getting this information out and to going against the grain. I'd imagine it's very difficult to go against your party, your people, but when you have a deep commitment to selective justice, it's worth noting here. So Turning Point USA promoted the threads hard. They were lifting up DataRepublican. Andrew Kolvet also pushed an NCRI report that accused Owens of inciting violence against Erika. So we're going to go back to that small r for a second. The entire value of the account came from DataRepublican belonging to nobody, from being an outsider with a laptop, no supervisor, no approving bodies. But she had invested interest. She was being paid by the Department of War, so she clearly had a supervisor since July. So this is where Sarah Rogers comes in. So the other person in that exchange didn't arrive at the State Department through anything resembling a normal path. So Rogers was a litigator who represented wonderful, darling people like the NRA and won a First Amendment case at the Supreme Court. And she had never worked in diplomacy, not once. So how does a litigator land one of the 10 most senior jobs at the State Department? And how does Blake Neff, constipated, mousy looking Blake Neff, how does his recommendation carry that much weight? Well, let me tell you. Blake Neff explained it this way publicly. Neff writes for the Charlie Kirk show. And he says Kirk was collecting names to pitch to the administration and asked him for recommendations. Neff sent in Rogers' name and resume, and she was among the first 2 names he passed along. You know, Turning Point USA, let's not forget how they treated Thomas Massie, who was one of Charlie Kirk's favorite electeds. They went and endorsed his opponent. So I don't think that he can really be trusted to be the voice of this dead man. The Senate confirmed Rogers in October 2025. One of the first things she did for the State Department was appear on the Charlie Kirk show alongside Neff and Andrew Kolvet, where she announced a formal partnership between the State Department and Turning Point USA. Kolvet described her confirmation as a continuation, carrying the flame, which is really weird because they're staffing a cabinet member's department. And then it gets even weirder. So in December, Utah politician Phil Lyman said Rogers acted as an intermediary between the State Department and Turning Point USA during an incident where Turning Point USA figures Tyler Bauer and Blake Neff threatened him. So that's his account. It's contested. So take it as an allegation rather than a fact. But what he describes is still worth reading carefully because it puts a sitting Undersecretary of State in the middle of a fight between a non-profit, for-profit voting, whatever the fuck Turning Point USA is, and an elected American official. So now a senior State Department official got her job because Turning Point USA's staff recommended her. And then she went on Turning Point USA's show to announce a partnership between her and a federal agency and Turning Point USA. Blake Neff sent in her resume. Like, what the F? Let's look at who holds power here. The State Department and the Department of War run budgets in the hundreds of billions and employ people who can put you in a courtroom. And let's also just step back for a second and think about how the coverage was treated from DataRepublican and how much influence she had while being very friendly and employed by the administration. And there is an arrow pointed in the wrong way here. And it flatters everyone that was trying to lie about what their jobs were. So Turning Point USA, podcasts, books, campus events, whatever the fuck whatever the grift of the day is, grift du jour. Nobody at the Pentagon is sitting around waiting for Andrew Kolvet to tell them what the message is. I can see how Blake Neff and Andrew Kolvet would think that they're delegating to the Department of War, but there's no way you're taking messages from these 2 ding-dongs. So federal employees, again, they're not taking assignments from these podcast bros that probably didn't even finish high school. The government side sets the agenda because the government side is the only one with the agenda it can enforce. So stop asking right now whether Turning Point USA has friends in the administration. We've got to stop doing that. We now need to ask whether Turning Point USA is still separate from it because we know they're the largest, albeit deeply struggling, political operation in the country for the youth and the right. And they have a federal employee feeding it opposition research and a cabinet department announcing partnerships on the show. And the millions of young people listening probably have no idea the arrangement. Y'all are trying to be anti-authoritarian, anti-government in the MAGA right-wing extremist social spheres. But guys, let's look at this. What the fuck? There are laws written for this exact situation, which is how you know somebody has tried it before. So we have the Hatch Act, bars federal employees from using their positions or government resources for partisan politics. Smith-Mundt restricts agencies from aiming information campaigns at Americans at home. The anti-propaganda riders in the appropriations bills prohibit spending tax money on covert, publicly directed information at the public. And Covert is really doing the real work in that sentence, because the undisclosed federal employee posting research in threads in this exact scenario, those writers describe. So there's also Posi Comitas, pardon me, not a lawyer, went to art school, limits how the military operates inside the country. So nobody has established what DataRepublican actually does in the Department of War. They won't say, and she's routing every question to their press office, which tells you plenty on its own. Here's what I keep coming back to. A federal employee spent 6 months running political research to protect Erika Kirk, to mobilize American citizens. A federal employee spent 6 weeks running political research on American citizens to mobilize American citizens to support Erika Kirk while telling the public she was independent. And the only reason anyone found out is that she mistook a press release for a trap, and a reporter got curious enough to look into it. That was the accident that set this whole thing off. Nobody has offered to tell us what hasn't been exposed by accident yet. This is pretty crazy to me. I bet it's pretty crazy to you. This is something that could bring us all together on the left and the right, because we have to agree, what the fuck? People are fucking dying. People are hungry. People are dying uninsured. And our government is investing resource in protecting Erika Kirk and mobilizing a base of Americans to sympathize for her. Let me know what you think in the comments.